Good morning. It's so wonderful to see you all on this frosty morning. Thank you for making it to church, and just keep your coats on. It is warming up in here little by little. Welcome to the worship service of the First Unitarian Church of Hobart. If you've been here before, you'll notice that this morning we're doing things a little differently than usual. So there will be some familiar things in different places and some new things too. For instance, usually we do our affirmation of faith a little later in the service, but for this series we'll be doing it a bit earlier. So I invite you to join me in speaking the words of our affirmation that may be on the screen and are in your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament. Service is its prayer, and this is our covenant. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. We realize that not everyone can attend in person, so we are streaming this worship service online, and we extend a special welcome to all who are joining us virtually. The joys and sorrows portion of our service, however, is private, and we will take a break from streaming for that portion of the service. Other than that, the service will be recorded and available for future viewing on our website. We are about to enter sacred time. We are about to make this time and this place sacred by our presence and intention. Please turn off or silence your devices, and as you do so, I invite us also to turn down the volume on our fears, to remove our masks, and to loosen the armor surrounding our hearts. Don't take my word for it. Do it as slowly as you need to. If you take a little risk with these good people, you may find that they have the same human needs as you do. Breathe. Let go of the expectations placed on you by others and those they taught you to place on yourself. Drop the guilt and the shame, not to shirk accountability, but in honest expectation of the possibility of forgiveness. Let go of the thing you said the other day. Let go of the thing you dread next week. Be here in this moment. Breathe here. Be here in this, oops, it's not on. Okay. I just wanted to acknowledge that be here in this moment. The invitation was written by Chip Roush, Reverend Chip Roush. Please join us now in lighting our chalice by reading together the words on the screen and in your order of service. Oh, good luck to me. Let's see. I do this, right? gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together.
So our worship service this morning in this chilly sanctuary, thank you all for warming it with your love as we continue to warm it with other materials. So in this worship service this morning, we'll be inviting you to do some exploration, some sharing with one another, and it might feel a little bit uncomfortable or awkward, but that is totally okay. We are not about being perfect in this congregation. We are about showing up with our best efforts and learning together. Our covenant is inherently forgiving, and even when it is broken, even then we still seek restoration and renewal. Stumbling is wholeheartedly welcomed. So in that spirit, may we lean into the productive discomfort that makes possible all learning and growth and community. So please rise in body or spirit and join me in some re-covenanting with some pieces from our behavioral covenant. I will say 3 of the lines from our behavioral covenant. I invite you to join me in the response. May we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. So for all the ways that we have not dwelled together in peace, may we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. For all the ways that we have not sought the truth in love, may we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. For all the ways that we have not helped one another, may we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. I invite you to open your gray hymnals and join us in singing hymn 108, My Life Flows On in Endless Song. And sing out, get the blood moving. Please be seated. So each week, even when we're not huddled together in a room, we are experiencing life as it goes on, the joys, the sorrows, the things that lift us up, the things that weigh us down. And there's an opportunity when we do gather in this space to lift them up, to speak them into the air, to hear one another, and to hold these things together. So I'm going to come around with a microphone, and I would invite anybody who has a joy or a sorrow that you would like to share with us to just share with us your name, and I'll hold the mic for you, and you can just let us know what's been on your heart. Yeah. So this worship service this morning is a continuing of our series that we've been doing. As I mentioned, the past couple of weeks, there is a desire for growth that the congregation has expressed, and the Board of Trustees last year set a vision of ministry for this year that says, in part, want to root our desire for growth through celebration of Unitarian Universalism within the congregation and in diverse public spaces. And so with this worship service, we're weaving together our exploration of a few different threads that we've been exploring over the past couple of years. Some Unitarians and Universalists from history, how our society allocates resources and sometimes perpetuates injustice, and what choices we can make in light of that. Our sense of place, of being in a particular place, taking a conscious look at the relationships that we're in, what patterns we want to continue, what patterns we want to disrupt. And so over this series in particular, we'll be looking at what historical patterns and legacies surround us and run through us in this land in which we all live, and what choices we can make that might heal the histories that might haunt us in ways that we don't easily recognize. And so I'll be offering some examples along the way from my own family's history, but the hope, the invitation is for you to also bring your own knowledge and awareness, or lack of knowledge and lack of awareness, whatever it may be, of your own family's history into this as well. At our best, we Unitarian Universalists practice mixing with many different kinds of people and thriving in that diversity. But in order to do that, to truly welcome that diversity, we need to both go on an inward and also an outward journey of transformation. An inward journey that deconstructs our own misconceptions and habits of which we might not even be conscious. And an outward journey that focuses on deepening relationships and practicing restorative solidarity. In the first week of this series, I mentioned Adrienne Marie Brown's line about things are not getting worse, they are being unveiled. And so this whole series is about doing some of that unveiling. We discussed in the first week a sense of placelessness that a lot of us experience. We talked about this question of where in the world should you feel like you, or where in the world do you feel like you should be, and where in the world do you feel like you shouldn't be? And there was some wrestling that folks expressed. Should I be over here? Should I be over there? And while there can be some freedom in that, I could be over here, I could be over there, can also be a lack of feeling embedded in a nourishing place, among nourishing people. And so I invited us on that twofold journey of transformation towards greater nourishment. Last week, I invited you to trace your lineage, where your people came from, and how and why, and where did they go to? Reckoning with the fact that when they relocated, the vast majority of our forebears left behind who and where and what shaped them, in most cases forever. They had to face kinds of adjustments to a novel social universe, and in the process, the inevitable question of how much to keep of their own culture was raised. And so this question of what does it mean for the legacies that we carry was introduced. And this week, we'll be turning our attention a bit more directly to the people themselves, as opposed to the land they came from and went to, their struggles, their courage in the face of those struggles. And so these questions, this journey is one that we're going on together. And so I'd like you to just take a note of the folks who are in the room around you. Maybe take a moment to greet your neighbors, waving your hands, letting the warmth of your smile fill the space, the warmth of the breath coming out of your mouth. Appreciating all the folks who are joining us online. And then we're going to share in groups of 2 or 3 with these folks we just greeted. We're going to share in groups of 2 or 3 a response to a question that ties into our service today. So usually we get to a point in our lives when we start to see our parents not just as parents, but also as people. People with their own adult struggles, their courage, just like us. and our grandparents too, and our great-grandparents. So what do you know of the courage and struggles of your ancestors? In a moment, I'm going to ask you to share that with your neighbor just briefly. But first, before we get to the actual verbal sharing part, we'll just have a minute for some quiet contemplation. Jeremy, is going to share some music with us. And so just as he's playing, sit with this question of what do you know of the courage and struggles of your ancestors? And then once he's done, then I'll invite you to share with each other. Okay, so I will keep time for us all. And just for 2 minutes, only 2 minutes, so this isn't a time for a long soliloquy, just sharing what comes up for you. What do you know of both the courage and the struggles of your ancestor in groups of 2 or 3? And I'll let you know when you have come to the time. Okay, that brings us to the end of the 2 minutes of sharing. And so I would invite just a couple folks to offer into the space either what you heard somebody else saying that particularly struck you in response to this question. Does anybody have something like to speak into the space around this? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jess. I continue to be amazed of how little I know about my ancestors and how much people know about theirs. And Stephanie was sharing just incredible courage and struggle that her ancestors went through. And I'm just so inspired to actually ask the questions of my family. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Jess. Yeah. Other folks? Yeah.
I didn't go back that far. I was thinking of my grandparents, although there's lots of old stories that I sort of know. But my grandfather grew up on a farm, and he made an agreement with his sister. They hated living on the farm. They wanted to get an education, and they wanted to get better jobs. He was born in 1900. And so his sister went to school, and he paid for her college, and then she got married, and she couldn't take care of him. So he went to night school, and that's what my father remembers. He was always working and studying and didn't have much time for him. In his 50s, he worked so hard, apparently, that he had a nervous breakdown. And he sat and stared at the wall for weeks. Grandma told me about it. It was before I was born or had any memory. And he came out of it because the doctor said, you need a hobby. So he started growing roses. And he had the most wonderful rose garden. And that was the result. That was part of his healing, part of his struggle.
Thank you, Maggie. That is beautiful. Yeah, yes.
Oops.
You can sit down. That's
Okay, my grandfather came over from Hungary and with his mother when he was a boy, and one of the housekeepers of my uncle said that my grandfather was Jewish, but nobody in the generation up here knew that, which was anti-Semitism, of course. But I had my DNA done with Ancestry.com, and I have Jewish DNA, so I thought that was very interesting.
Thanks for sharing that with us. Okay. Thank you all for sharing some snippets. There are so many others that we don't have time for, but much gratitude for what has been brought in.
This is a reading, number 680 in our hymnal by Barbara Peskin. Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of, and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we, too, dream.
Please rise for the doxology.
Today is The Answer in Your Hands, adapted from an Indian folk tale. There was once a wise woman who lived by herself near a small village. Rumor had it that she could always accurately predict when the rains would come, or help heal a sick child with herbs, or calm angry neighbors and help them to resolve their fights and arguments. People came from all over the land to meet with her and seek her advice on matters both small and great. Her reputation was such that it was said she was never wrong, not ever. Some of the children of the village didn't believe that it was possible to always be right. Surely she could not know everything. They decided to test her knowledge. First, they asked her to answer questions about the planets, the animals, and the world. No matter how hard the questions, she always answered correctly. The children were amazed at her knowledge and learning, and most were ready to stop testing the wise woman. However, one boy was determined to prove that the old woman couldn't know everything. Hatching a devious scheme, he told all of his friends to meet him at the woman's home the following afternoon so he could prove she was a fake. All through the next day, he hunted for a bird. Finally, he caught a small songbird in a net. Holding it behind his back so no one could see what was in his hands, he walked triumphantly to the wise woman's house. "Old woman," he called, "come and show us how wise you are." The woman walked calmly to the door. "May I help you?" she simply asked. "You say you know everything. Prove it." "What am I holding behind my back?" the young boy demanded. The old woman thought for a moment. She could make out the faint sounds of a bird's wings rustling. "I do not say I know everything, for that would be impossible," she replied. "However, I do believe you are holding a bird behind your back, in your hands." The boy was furious. How could the woman have possibly known he had a bird? Thinking quickly, he came up with a new scheme. He would ask the woman whether the bird was alive or dead. If the woman replied, "alive," he would crush it with his hands and prove her wrong. If she answered dead, on the other hand, he would pull the living bird from behind his back and allow it to fly away. Either way, he would prove his point, and the wise woman would be discredited. "Very good," he called. "It is a bird, but tell me, is the bird I am holding alive or dead?" The wise woman paused for a moment, a long moment, while the boy waited with anticipation for his opportunity to prove her wrong. Again, the woman spoke calmly. "The answer, my young friend, is in your hands. The answer is in your hands." The boy realized that the wise woman had once again spoken correctly and truthfully. The answer was indeed in his very own hands. Feeling the bird feebly moving in his hands as it tried to escape his grasp, he felt suddenly very ashamed. The answer was in his hands. Slowly and gently, he brought his hands to the front of his body. Looking into the eyes of the delicate bird, he apologized. "I am sorry, little one," and he opened his hands and let her go free. And please join in singing the middle hymn, number 1003 in the teal hymnal, "Where Do We Come From?" Please rise as you are willing and able. Thank you.
Like last week, we'll do this, each line is repeated, and we will do this hymn twice. And Maggie and Carl will sing the ground part. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do
Please be seated. So as I noted last week, in my great-grandmother's memoir, she wrote, "The changing of the good and honest name Heller," which was her family name originally, to a completely strange name when she got to the U.S., hurt me more than the conversion to Christianity. Even now, 6 years later, I cannot resign myself to the fact that I am Rose Horvey instead of Mrs. Eula Heller. Who is this Mrs. Horvey? A toothless old woman riddled with arthritis and aching joints who lives off her memories in a strange environment. Her true self is Mrs. Eula Heller. The dreams and the reality, the sorrow and the happiness that she lived through as Mrs. Eula Heller. I sneer at myself when I am addressed as Mrs. Horvey. That with the loss of my name, I have not lost myself. I attribute to my escape into the past. Consequently, I am not particularly punished with sorrow by the present, nor am I too receptive to happiness. This sloughing off, this letting go of heritage continued when her son and her daughter-in-law refused to teach their children Hungarian, insisting that it was just worthless knowledge that would take up precious space in their brains. And it continued into my own generation. When I was a kid, I was a really big fan of Burger King, because the Burger King, we didn't have a Chuck E. Cheese in the town that I grew up in. The Burger King was sort of our Chuck E. Cheese. There was a Burger King on one in this plaza, and then right next to it was this arcade that had the big bears that bang on the drums and stuff, and you could do your birthday party there, and there was skee ball and arcade games and all that kind of stuff. And the Burger King itself had these huge murals all over the walls, so it looked like you were in a castle. And there would be an outfit of a knight standing there with like a shake that they were drinking from, and burgers on plates all over the place. It was this delightfully had an experience of wonder to go there. And so my grandfather, one time when he was in town visiting my mom and I, he offered to take me out to Burger King because he knew how much I loved it. And so we went there. He also offered to bring a friend along and get us all lunch. Now, I was so excited. I invited this friend along, and we were there in Burger King eating our Whoppers, the cheese, and really enjoying just the ambiance of the Burger King and the taste of the food, but also very uncomfortable with my grandfather being there with me and my friend, because he talked funny. He had this accent that wasn't how you're supposed to talk. It's not how normal people talked. And so I could feel my own embarrassment about my own family and heritage, although I wouldn't have thought to put it that way at the time. That I wanted to run away from it and get back to whatever normal looked like. The vast majority of us in this society relocate at some point. Uproot ourselves from the place in which we grow up, go to a new place, maybe once, maybe many times. To the extent that our doing so is freely chosen, it can be a joyful experience, but to the extent that our relocation is a result of some kind of pressure, either feeling unsafe in a situation we want to get away from, or sacrificing a life that we've been living, or trying to find something that we need, it can be a painful experience. And sometimes it's a mix of both that freedom and that joy, and also that pain. The relocation is just one part of it. What parts of our ancestors were they coerced into leaving behind? What social networks, what favorite places, what family, what parts of themselves did they lose touch with? We don't just inherit things from our parents through their genes or their DNA. We also learn to carry all that we inherit in a certain way. In the words of theologians Elaine Enns and Ched Myers, what we are born into, the place, or racial, ethnic, gender formation, or social status, or cultural traditions, how we were taught to be a part of a family or a community, the stories that we were told and retell about who our people were and are, and legacies we've inherited, both painful and proud. Last week, after the worship service, most of the people who came to the discussion talked about how there was a lot of family silence about family history, a past that had been washed away or covered up. And I often find that that is true of European Americans. So what might it say about our culture, predominated by European Americans, that so much of the past has been washed away or covered up? There are moments when a normally quiet and non-expressive elder might become emotional. It might be a sign that something important is going on. Have you had instances of feeling honored by that revealing, of somebody sharing that part of themselves with you? Are there instances of relationships where you haven't gotten to have that, where there hasn't been that deep sharing? I feel incredibly grateful for my last conversation with my grandfather. He had been a challenging person to be with through much of his life, through much of my life, but he had a really impactful conversation with my grandmother when he was nearing the end of his life, and had a change of heart and really wanted to show up to his relationships differently. And the very last phone call that I had with him, there was a softness, a tenderness in his voice that I hadn't gotten to experience before then. And it felt like such a gift. There are so many questions that I might have asked, or things that I might have explored or discovered in the space that offered. There are entire generations of experience that might have been accessed. Oftentimes, the things that don't get shared are painful, challenging things. Stories around fear or violence or loss, possibly lost siblings, or people disappearing or being arrested or dispossessed or displaced. So is it any wonder that sometimes family members can be characterized as stern, as unexpressive, after having maybe gone through those experiences? In his book, My Grandmother's Hands, therapist, healer, and author Resmaa Menakem wrote about the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, a study of 17,000 people over 3 decades that was published in 2014, which clearly links childhood trauma, in his words, and other adverse childhood events involving abuse or neglect to a wide range of long-term health and social consequences, including illness, disability, social problems, and early death, all of which can get passed down through the generations. There's a strong statistical link between even one adverse childhood event and increased rates of heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, chronic lung disease, alcoholism, depression, liver disease, financial stress, attempted suicide. People who have experienced 4 or more adverse events as children, in Menakem's words, are twice as likely to develop heart disease than people who have experienced none. They're also twice as likely to develop autoimmune diseases, 4.5 times as likely to be depressed, 10 times as likely to be intravenous drug users, and 12 times as likely to be suicidal. As children, they are 33 times as likely to have learning and behavioral problems in school. So the results of this adverse childhood experiences study are dramatic. But it only covered 15 years. 15 years. How much more dramatic might the results have been for people who have experienced, or whose ancestors experienced, centuries of impact? Although we don't have studies with as many people over that broad a time period, because that's just not possible, in recent years, there have also been studies that show similarly that trauma gets passed down, alters DNA, shifts who we are in very fundamental ways. Symptoms have been tracked of PTSD in Holocaust survivors, of nightmares, flashbacks, pain attacks, heart palpitations, severe physiological disturbances, avoiding certain persons, places, or events that trigger memories, and then the offspring of parents with PTSD, when exposed to their own traumas, displayed an unusually high rate of psychiatric disorders. So it's been particularly hard for me, as a person of Jewish descent, to handle what's been going on in Israel and Palestine over the past 3 months. And any legitimate concern about the events playing out being met with cries of anti-Semitism. But I also believe that the horrendous pain that my ancestors experienced being connected to tens of thousands of Palestinians dying is just a louder, more visible version of what's been going on for centuries on this continent. And that in many ways is just getting more and more subtle and harder to notice over time. In Jeannie Wiley's words, how many white Americans know their ancestry? How many can sing a song or say a prayer or bake the bread of their country or countries of origin? As important, how many know the positions their foreparents took in the struggles of their native land? Did they fight for or against the monarchy? Did they support or reject ecclesial authority? There is power in knowing these things. They offer a construct through which to consider the United States today, and most of it has been forfeited. It was exchanged for employment at Ford Motor Company, or for admission to the elite schools of the nation, or for the appearance of upward mobility. The spiritual, sometimes I feel like a motherless child, speaks of the involuntary separation of slave families, but the same society that did that for over 250 years also took parts of my family from me, the Hungarian parts, the Jewish parts, the English parts, the Scottish parts, the Dutch parts. To pick just one of those threads, I will never know what it would have been like to go to temple with my family growing up. I'll never know what it would have been like to understand my grandparents when they spoke in their own native language to each other. When we start to peel back these layers and go on this exploration, we start to learn our ancestors' process of becoming white. So what healing might there be for us to do on ourselves? What traumas might we have inherited, passed down genetically from our blood relatives, passed through socialization processes with ancestors we may or may not have even been related to by blood, passed down through communal narratives? Oftentimes, it's hard to tell. Sometimes traumatic events or testimonies are edited out of a communal narrative in order to shore up our self-perceptions of morality or strength or prestige. There are particular ways that things often get skipped over. One, editing things out because it doesn't fit the nice story that we want to tell. The nice story that makes us feel good, that sounds beautiful or remarkable, that may even be true, but with certain aspects of the story taken out. Or another thing that often gets skipped is focusing on the stories of men often means missing out on the remarkable physical, emotional, and spiritual courage of the women along the way. Or skipping past the ways in which one's family has been complicit or entangled in events that ended up traumatizing others. Unfortunately, narratives of silence don't help us heal. So how can we reread our people's stories mindfully and maybe revise them compassionately? This healing work is particularly important because not only our ancestors may not only have been harmed or traumatized in some way, but also because they may have caused harm or trauma in some way, which might lead to what some call moral injury, when one's own actions or the actions of one's peers or leaders are demonstrably inconsistent with one's own moral code. So rather than carrying guilt for the sins of our ancestors, we can acknowledge whatever moral injury might have been done along the way through their entanglement with historical harm. The vast majority of us have inherited both privileges and brokenness, strengths and wounds, and we can work with it all. Naming our family's complicity is about healing from a system that is killing us all, as well as others. When opening our awareness to the harm that our ancestors caused, the temptation can be to feel shame or to blame them for their actions, to hold the reality in our hands, hidden from our clear view. But the possibility is also to feel the life there, to focus on our own agency, to focus on the choices that we can make now, to open our hands and let it fly free, to embrace our own ability to choose to respond in a way that carries forward either harms of the past or actively nourishes life in the future. The answer is in our hands. And so in the spirit of that answer, I offer you a question to consider over this coming week. What in your family, your blood family, your chosen family, what in your family history might be yours to heal? What in your family history might be yours to heal? May we look to each other to shore up our strength to face the earth's lamentation, and also hear the real, though far off hymn that hails the new creation that we can play a part in creating. Through all the tumult and the strife, may we hear the music still ringing as it sounds this echo in our souls. May you face and know the living truth, knowing that when we stay in community with each other, we need not feel shame. We can show up with all the complexities that we carry within us, the things that lift us up, the things that weigh us down, and give them voice. And then may we nourish a larger community where justice rolls down like waters and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
Part of how we in this congregation nourish a larger community where justice rolls down the waters and peace like an ever-flowing stream is by sharing our resources to make the world a better place. This month, we are sharing our Loose Change for Social Change offering with the Homeless Veterans Program at the Adam Benjamin Jr. VA Outpatient Clinic in Crown Point. In less than 2 years, the Homeless Veterans Program at the Crown Point VA Clinic has served over 600 veterans. Within this vast number spans gender, racial, and economic lines and a variety of challenges: service injury, transportation, a variety of mental health conditions, addiction, homelessness. You may wonder, doesn't the VA fund services to help? Yes, of course, housing, transitional shelter, case management positions like Stephanie Dowell's, but our Loose Change will help, for example, this 69-year-old veteran with zero income pay the $15 fee for a birth certificate, top up minutes on his phone so he can do a food stamp interview by phone, and a meal from Subway before he heads back to the VA-funded emergency hotel stay while he waits for his housing approval. Your change shortens the time from homelessness to the security of a home. Thank you. I will need 4 volunteers, please. sustaining the mission of our congregation. The money in the cups goes to the Health Care for Homeless Veterans Program. Sorry, Jeremy. For those not with us in person today, there is an online link for both one-time and regular donations. Sorry. For your prayers, your presence, your service, and your gifts, we are truly grateful. Now we have announcements. Another way that we nourish that larger community is by joining together for fun and fellowship. Thanks so much to everyone who helped set up and clean yesterday for the fundraising concert. Thanks especially to Jeremy, whose music was such a treat to listen to. We made between $700 and $800 last night, still nailing it down the specifics, but thanks to everyone. It was a success and it was a lot of fun, and it really was. I really enjoyed it. OWL is in session Sunday evening through April. To cut costs for the congregation, we are asking congregants to consider bringing a meal for the break for the kids and teachers. There are 6 kids and 3 teachers. Let Michelle Farrell or Ruth Halstead know if you are interested in bringing a meal. Roz has announcements about the calendar.
Hola, everyone. Fun time last night, huh? What a party. I liked it. It was good. More to come, I'm sure. So this is the celebratory 150-year calendar. And for all of you that some of you may not know, in this calendar, there are pictures from the day. Back in the day, you'd be seen before our day. There's folks in there. Well, I think there's, I'm pretty sure most of us are younger than that. And you'll see all these photos. Old ones, new, and some you're going to be able to say, oh, I know her. That's an adult now, that little kid. He's all grown up now. So it's kind of cool. So you see a lot of good pictures in here, pulled up by James and his crew, putting it all together. These are all writable. The squares are big enough to put in your own personal notes, as well as all of the church's fundraising, holidays, and that stuff is already on here. Hey, when's this year? Look at the calendar. Oh, here it is. That means I gotta bring my stuff in 3 months before I need to. So. So here you have all the information that's going on in here. If anyone sees anything, because this is a good possibility of being every year. Okay, we're thinking about $10 a pair. $15 a piece. But that includes all this information that you already have. You have to look for your computer. You don't have to look for your phone. You don't have to put it anywhere. It's right here on your calendar. Every day you look at it, every day you know what's happening at the UU. Okay? So, give us a holler. We have just started. We got some made. We'd like to get as many as we can by the end of the month for sure. But just a jingle. Cash up front or Vimo or whatever way we can figure out to get you paid for.
Are they for sale today?
I think we can take orders today, and I can have physical calendars by probably next Sunday. Okay?
We have some already.
We have some.
You have some, do you?
Some. Yeah.
Already got some? Well, there you have it. We can get you some today, we can get you some next week. They're
$30
good.
today, $15 next week.
Is your contract coming up? So, yeah, that's a great idea. I'll take 30 in a minute. You know, and so this is something we want to try and see if we can do it every year. So you might want to be able to give it to friends and relatives. This is what we do here. I'm going to buy some just to give it to people that don't know who we are. They still think we're warlocks and witches in here. And I'm just going to give it to them. Here, look, check out. Here's a calendar. Pretty one. nice pictures. You may know some of these people out of Hobart. Okay? So give me a holler, Michelle, any one of us senior types. And those of us who've been around for a minute and can know what's going on. If somebody walk out the streets as senior, somebody think it's them. So please, do it early. Try to get all, you can get all the calendars you want in no time at all. So we're gonna have them sit up, get what you want, pass them out to friends and relatives, and enjoy the holidays because they're all gonna be here. All right, thanks guys.
I also have a live announcement. The annual point in time count is coming up on January 24th. The point in time count is a nationwide count. They pick a particular Wednesday in the month of January, so the intention is that it's the coldest of the year. Anyway, and then groups across the country go out in smaller groups to count people who are literally homeless on the street. So anyway, agencies in the area, Carl's agency in Chicago Heights is doing it in the south suburbs. The VA participates, the Crown Point Clinic participates in Northwest Indiana. So if you're interested in volunteering, they always try to pair people who are in the social service agencies, people with lived experience, and community volunteers. So if you are interested, just let me know and I will get you further information. And again, I can't remember if I said the date. It was Wednesday, January 24th. Thank you. I don't know the times yet. So yeah, I'll get you more information. Thank you.
Now please rise in body and spirit to join in singing hymn number 121, We'll Build a Land.
Everybody
closing words are by V. Emil Gudmundsson. And now, may we have faith in life to do wise planting, that the generations to come may reap even more abundantly than we. May we bold in bringing to fruition the golden dreams of human kinship and justice. This we ask, that the fields of promise become fields of reality. After the postlude, we will extinguish this flame, but we will continue to carry in our hearts the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. Until we are together again. Pardon me. Oh, well. Please join me in extinguishing the chalice.
So the words have already been said. So you
Just do it? My bad. Thank you. Please join us.
The warm fellowship.
We'll be in the warm fellowship hall.
Thank you.